Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my so-called handmade life. I have a blog by the same name, and that's my name on Instagram. On Ravelry, I am Mamatronic. And there's a Ravelry group for my so-called handmade life. Do you hear my voice squeaking? Group. I have a allergy thing happening, apparently. Anyway, I have all the links and stuff I talk about, and I link a lot of stuff, odd stuff I talk about, and sometimes there's little Easter eggs buried in there. You can find it here in the description box or on my blog where I embed the episode, or in the Ravelry group on the episode thread. And if you comment or ask questions, you help kind of guide our conversation, and I'll probably mention the things you talk about there. You can even comment on the Instagram post where I talk about the episode if you want. So this is a knitting podcast. Knitting, did I say that clearly? Knitting podcast. But I talk about all kinds of other stuff. I'm tired, y'all. I am tired of seeing people on Instagram post pictures. They're wearing their sweaters outdoors. It's the middle of the day, and they're saying, oh, it's fall. Finally, fall has arrived. I'm eaten up with jealousy, basically. And I'm just so done with the heat. It's been like, my phone, I'll look at the temperature and it'll say like 94, 95, 98, whatever. Then it'll say feels like 106. And I'm so thoroughly baked all the way through. I feel like I can't take any more heat. I feel partially aflame all the time when I'm outside. I don't know if that's my age or what, but when I am outside though, like I might be an hour and a half of running, walking, whatever, working in the garden. It's like I'm doing stuff that's kind of physical, but I'm just so tired of it. I don't want to knit on the patio anymore. The dogs, they love it, but I hate it now. I'm ready for cool weather. I need seasons. I think human beings were made to feel seasons. I need to feel a season besides the depths of hell. So that title misleads you, I know. Yeah, I'm just baked all the way through from the heat. The workout I was doing yesterday, what I was trying to do, I came in and I just took an all cold shower afterward. I had been on Facebook and seen old family photos and videos and stuff, and I saw these ones when we took martial arts as a family. So one's of my son doing it, and then there was one of me. I did this extreme form that I made up for a tournament it's like extreme form is extreme. You're doing sort of gymnastic-like movements, so, you know, young kids can do flips sometimes. Nobody there did, but aerials and things like that. I can't do that. Like, I can't do anything where you fly backward, but I can do things like splits and, you know, cartwheels and one-handed cartwheels and round-offs and things. So I can do a K-kick. So I made up this form, all made up. I did all the movements, and you do it to music and it's timed, and it was really vigorous, like. And so I'm watching it and thinking, I wonder if I could still do that. Like, obviously I don't remember the combination of movements, the order of them, but I take it outside for my workouts. I work out, and I'm watching some of it, and then I try to do it in my garage. And I have like martial arts matting. Then I watch some more and I try to do it. Basically, I'm really slow and I don't remember all the movements, how they link together, but I could do everything in it except I would do a back bend and pop right back up. I can't do that right now. So I was like, well, I mean, I'm seeing some core weakness there. My whole thing about trying to get stronger, that's why I did this. I just wondered, where am I at? Because I did that extreme form like 10 years ago. And I was pleased that I could still do everything, and I can see how I could do the popping back up from the back bend. I can do a back bend, but popping right back up, with some practice, I could do that. Anyway, it was dorky. The whole thing, I felt cheesy as I performed it because, you know, you do things like, you know, when you take martial arts, you have to go, kya, kya, you know. Yeah, I always felt silly doing that. But also, I'm the only adult. And so, like, the other contestants are kids. So I'm the only person, I got first place because I was the only over 35 person doing it. But the rest were teenagers and boys, usually. And they're all, like, serious, and they're playing this crazy loud music and, you know, doing these movements like they're out to kill. And mine was so goofy. So, anyway, maybe I'll link to it. If I do, it'll be in the notes. And just keep in mind, it was kind of silly. There was a tongue-in-cheek attitude about it. I wasn't trying to be a badass, okay? End weaving party. So I wove in a lot of ends. I took Virginia's advice. She said 20 minutes of mindfulness practice. Make it end weaving. And I was like, ugh, I want my mindfulness practice to be fun. But I went ahead and I took her advice, and I did that a few days, and I did weave in all the ends on my Kia socks. There were quite a few on this. This is Dawn Henderson's Kia pattern, Mockingbird Fiber Company yarn in the Monica's Apartment colorway, and then some kind of contrast color that just came with it. I really enjoy a contrast traditional heel flap. I think I've only done that one other time. I like these socks. They're not super tight. I think the pearl bumps in them gives it not a scrunchy, like the 80s scrunchy socks, not that, but just kind of a loose fitted sock like you could wear with clogs or something. It would just look cute. I don't know how to describe it. So I finished that, and I wove in all the ends on my gingerbread house socks. I used Smooth Operator by Susan B. Anderson as my pattern, and this is the Jinx yarn colorway, and matching heel toe and cuff yarn that Laura sold with this Jinx yarn. So I usually use Smooth Operator when I'm doing afterthought heels. One thing I would like to try is the Kirby Werby heel method, but I just always find when I'm ready to do my heels, I'm busy. I'm too busy to look up how to do it and take the time to make sure I don't destroy my yarn. So I haven't actually done it yet. I just bring waste yarn and do 3 rows of waste yarn like the Smooth Operator calls for. So I got those done, and I felt really good about it. And I am going to do my ends on my socks immediately after knitting from now on. So anyway, all this end weaving, it was just crazy. What a crazy wild party we had. I probably finished the ends for 4 projects and 1 other sock. I'll show it when I have the other one done. Grow Team by Carolyn Dick was another one. I finally wove just 4 ends. I don't know why it took me forever. This was a called for fingering weight 1 skein. It's a shawl, but I had DK, and this is a Madeline Tosh color of some sort. Farm eggs, fresh eggs, yard eggs. I think yard eggs is what it's called. I liked these colors, and I wanted to go ahead and use all of it. So I just kept knitting, and what I have here is very much scarf-like, you know? Like, this is, it could be a shawl, but it's not very deep. So, very much, look at me, I don't know how to wear a scarf anymore. It's not like I get much of an opportunity, you guys. Yeah. So, anyway, it's long and thin, kind of like a scarf. And I love the way it looks. It was fun to learn or to do the linen stitch, and I enjoyed that. So that one's completely complete. Just need to make photos out in the heat. I have to do photos of courage too that I showed you last week. So then I showed you the Sonder shawl I was going to start. I showed you the yarn by Sarah Craft, Sarah Mayen's store on Etsy. And Sarah Craft is her Etsy store, but she also has a podcast, the Sarah Craft Podcast. I'll have links to that. Remember, she's having a sale for viewers. The sale code, coupon code, is Handmade, all caps. It's 15% off anything in her shop. So she does have superwash acid dyed yarns like this, but she's also got some non-superwash and natural dyed things with marigolds and avocado and stuff like that. So I finished the Sonder shawl. This is by Helen Stewart. I'm going to get where you can see these colors. I don't know if you can see. I think this is the perfect, it's called Autumn Leaves. I think it is the perfect rendering of the colors of fall. The only thing missing is there's super bright red leaves that are tallow trees. As they fall and turn, they turn a super bright red. That's the only color missing. The rest are totally what I see when the leaves finally fall here, especially this bluish gray. I love that. That is one of the colors, is the leaves decay. I enjoyed coming to those spots in the yarn. I just enjoyed everything about working with it. So Sonder is a bulky weight pattern, but this is worsted. I had 2 skeins, and I wanted to use as much of the skeins as possible. So after seeing that other people made it work with worsted, I did the same. And of course, it's on a smaller scale because I'm using a smaller yarn, so I had to knit longer to get the same size, but the proportions are perfect. I don't know how many extra repeats I knit, but I wanted 3 nice full tassels, 1 on each corner. So I knit till I thought I had a ball remaining. Sorry, I've been dealing with this crud. Thank you, Julie, for giving me advice about your allergies and how you had pneumonia as a child, because I had it really bad as a kid, and I've always had this little dry cough since. And I realized this time of year, the last 3 or 4 years, I've really struggled with breathing. So I do need to take medicine, and I was encouraged that you said you don't have to take it all the time, because that was kind of my fear. I didn't want to be committed to a medicine all the time. Anyway, it's all breaking up now because I am taking medicine, a different kind, a combination. So anyway, thank you for that. Sorry for the cough. I had this little ball left, enough to do the 3 tassels, I thought. So I took the center of the ball and I just started winding it the other direction, and I made tassels from that center pull of the ball. And I got to where I had 1 tassel left to do, and I was pretty much out of yarn. So this was much longer. I just started ripping back and using yarn out of the actual shawl itself. And after I had the tassel made, the yarn clipped, then I kept ripping until I had enough yarn to do a 7-row garter border like the pattern calls for. I knit my border, I attached my tassels, I was done. And I had already woven in my cast on end. I was just this far in the pattern and I wove it in. I did not want to deal with ends anymore, so I am being very good. I immediately wove these ends in and trimmed my tassels. So I love the way it looks. Let me see if I can kind of show you how it looks when it's worn. It was not quite the dimensions of the pattern called for. I don't know. This isn't quite. Anyway, you get the idea. It doesn't look too great with this underneath, but it wasn't quite the dimensions. I think it was 43 inches in length it was supposed to be, but after blocking, I got it wet. It just stretched right out. My cat helped me block it, smooth it out. So I gotta take this off. It's so hot. It is so miserable. I am blasting AC so that I can wear my Soldotna to show you guys. I'm wasting energy, destroying the environment just for you, so I don't spontaneously combust. All right. So I told you the coupon code for that. This is my soldotna. I'm done with it. And the sleeves are about like this when I'm not, my elbows aren't bent. That's a good length for me. I didn't want tight ends. It actually loosened up here. There's some ease in the sleeves. I don't know if you can tell. And I am wearing like one of my son's old t-shirts all bunched up underneath it. I asked you guys how you would style a crop top like this, and then I totally wore it over workout clothes. I just wear grungy clothes that I can, all the time, that I can work in the garden, walk outside, whatever. But here's my length. It's about the same length that it was, but it's wider in the body, and that is exactly the fit I wanted. When I take pictures online, you'll be able to see. But remember, I had that floppy ribbing. Well, Frauke had a really good suggestion for this that she saw. I think Julie Weisenberger talks about it in Cocoa Knits. She said that I could knit the ribbing longer if it was kind of floppy, add to it, and then turn it under and sew it to the inside. So sort of like a turned hem. And that would keep it from flaring out. It would just kind of hang long and drapey. It wouldn't necessarily close in, but that's a great idea, Frauke. I didn't have to do that, obviously. Also, I was out of that color of yarn, but that's a good idea to keep in mind in the future. I've never done that before to solve a loose ribbing problem. Once I knit a hat, one of my first hats, and it was lace. So I was new to all of this. It was like a slouchy beanie. I knit the ribbing, and after I put it on, it was, excuse me, it was so floppy and loose, it just didn't fit well. So I picked up stitches on the outside, at the very beginning of the ribbing where the brim started. On the outside, I picked up stitches, but fewer stitches than I'd had before. And I started knitting, and I basically knit from the outside of the sweater a whole new brim. So the old floppy brim is on the inside of the hat. You can't even see it. And the new one holds it to my head. I haven't worn that hat in forever. I don't even know if I still have it, but it was, to me, an ingenious fix. And I don't know if I read about it somewhere or just tried it fiddling around, but that worked out really well. So I love this. I love the way these colors look. I love the way it's blocked out. I really love it. I love the length of the sleeves. I still have these ends to weave in. Actually, it's just dry. I just finished blocking it today. I actually unpinned it where I was trying to pin out the sleeves. So I have those ends to weave in because it did work. I don't have to go back and rip out the ribbing and add to the sleeves. The length is fine. So this is also Mockingbird Fiber Company, the same as the Kia socks. And this is in their sold-out-in-a kit called Drops of Jupiter. That's the main color. So Drops of Jupiter, Dust on the Bottle, and Night Mauves is this pinkish purple, and then Natural Woman is the natural color. Also, I did a modification that Woolly Bear 99 did on Ravelry to widen this neck, and it's even wider since I blocked it. I really like this. This is exactly how I want it to be, and this is not the shirt I would normally wear with it. So I asked you guys how you would wear it. Stacy Yellowbird Knits said she knits crop tops a little longer personally, but she wears them over dresses. Maybe I'll show some photos that I find of different patterns or something that how it's styled. I might show them here if it works, if I can find them, or take the time to do it. Little Kitten says nope, she doesn't do the crop top thing, but she's going to make a soldotna and will knit it regular body length and long sleeves. So you're gonna love it. This is a very fun knit. It gets a little tedious doing the long sleeves, right? With the look at my end, how pitiful. Tiny, tiny baby end. Yeah, the 3 colors on the sleeve going was tough, but that trick I showed you last week where I put the ball I'm not using down, I put it down the sleeve and just use the other two colors and then take whichever one I'm not going to use for the next one and stick it down the sleeve. That really helps speed things up for me. Stacy, a different Stacy, doesn't do crop tops either, but she recommends like a camisole and a long skirt or dress. I was thinking of how I've seen people wear really oversized crop tops with long layered camisoles or a long flowy camisole and a skirt. So it's got this long tiered layers. I kind of like how that looks. It has a old-fashioned look to it to me. I just don't have that kind of camisole, I don't think, that fits me anymore. Or skirts, really. Katie, yes, it was you, Katie, that I was talking about with all the cute vintage sweaters. She knits a lot of Poison Girls patterns and Andy Satterland, and Katie will do a lot of them in cotton. So she's in a warm environment too, so she can wear them. She wears them with high-waisted shorts because it's like summer sweaters, or high-waisted pants or skirts. And she recommended Madewell. They have some good high-waisted pants that she's found comfortable. Thank you for that recommendation. I'm going to check that out. That's something missing in my wardrobe, is high-waisted anything. So her adamantine is one that she mentioned. That's a more loose, like this, oversized top, and it's slightly cropped. It's not super short, but I do love it. And she'll wear that over a dress with a little more room to it, a little more ease, or maybe a shirt dress. So those are all good suggestions. Melissa, Tranquility Knits, is knitting her first crop top. It's called Love Pecan, and it's free on Ravelry, so I'll have a link to that. It's cute. It kind of has that look with the eyelets of like Love Note, or there was another one that's popular right now that has that look. And it could be cropped. It is cropped, but it's not as cropped as this. You could make it long, though. You don't have to have it cropped. Anyway, she's been struggling, though, with the yarn overs and then having to rip back. And I can say this, Melissa, when I first started doing eyelets or lace, like even that lady bat that I talked about last week, I messed up so many times, and I wasn't even a new knitter. But I would just not think and forget a yarn over or something. And I had trouble reading my knitting. And I would have to rip back again and start over. And trust me, the more you do it, you're kind of she said she's a beginning knitter. The more you do it, the easier it will be for you to look at it and read your stitches and say, ah, that's the place where I made the mistake. But I remember when I first started knitting, I would just knit, and it was like this magic, and it was just appearing down the needles, and oh my gosh, I don't even know how I did that last thing I did. If I made one mistake, the whole thing got ripped out, and I started over because I had no clue how to tink back to it. Yeah. Now I can look way down in a pattern and say, oh, I see what I did on that row and that row and that. You know, it is learning to read it, and you will get that the more you do it. So I love this. This is a Caitlin Hunter pattern. And it made me want to pick up my Guthrie again, which I set aside for test knitting a few things and then knit along. So let me show you where I'm at with Guthrie. It's also Caitlin Hunter, and she's going to be at the Knitting in the Hills retreat, and I'm actually going to be going to that. I've never done a retreat. I don't think it's something I would normally do often, but I thought one time I'll do it. And this one's local, I mean fairly local to me. So Guthrie is, I'm using Cascade 220 as the main color with Spin Cycles Mississippi Marsala dyed in the wool. I don't know if these colors are coming out on the screen. I can't tell. But I love the way they're working up. This constant color change is just really neat. I was originally going to do this with some Stash 220, or no, it wasn't 220, it was maybe Knit Picks. excuse me, wool of the Andes sport, possibly, that was brown. And brown would definitely pop. It would make this pop. But I saw on Instagram another woman had hers, the same Mississippi Marsala colorway, but with a natural background. I thought, you know what? There was a big sale, Cascade 220. It was affordable. I grabbed it because I really loved that look. And I don't normally do a light main color and a dark contrast color, so it was neat to flip it around. This yarn looks kind of okay. It may be that I'm just knitting too loosely here, but I don't know if you can see. There's like these little spots that look kind of loose there, but it definitely fulls a little. It blooms when you wash it or when you soak it. Let me see if I have my yeah, because the way this looks, it kind of looked like little spindly strands of the spin cycle, and then the Cascade looked fuller with more of a halo. But after I washed this, it all filled out, and they're the same in width. It looks really nice. This did not look nice and even, but it does now that it's been washed. So that encouraged me, and so I don't want this to be tight and have weird puckering. Like these sleeves, I had to block excessively because they got tight with this color work right here for some reason. I think it's before I switched to larger needles. So I didn't want that problem with this, so I'm letting it be nice and loose. Maybe it looks a little sloppy, but that's what I did with the swatch, and it bloomed and looks really pretty. So I'm excited about this. I'm enjoying working on it. It's fun. It's like working a puzzle or paint by numbers or something. The chart. It's fun. And it's all over color work all the way down. So that'll be nice. So the last thing that I'm working on is I'm finally doing a Tamy Gore pattern. Let me show you some of the ones I've liked. I have several of her patterns in my library and I haven't knit them yet. So one I've wanted to do for a while is Minis and Me, and I even got a set of mini skeins from a homespun house. It was her rustic mini skeins, and I thought, well, I'll use that for this. Well, it's not really the same yardage if you do the colors, place them how Tamy did here, but obviously, as you're going to see, I don't have to do that. So I thought maybe I would use them there. Maybe I would use them for something else that she's got. I have several of these, but let me just show you a few that Milu is really graphic and bold. I love the way this looks. So the one I'm doing right now is Color Craze. And I thought about doing it, and then I thought, no, I just don't have, I wanted colors that all really gelled together. I didn't want it to be a rainbow of colors. And I just didn't think I didn't think my rustic minis would work. But then Molly of a Homespun House, you've seen recently, she knit her Color Craze and used a different mini skein set, but it's the same amount, 10 gram skeins. And she just used, 2 skeins of a fingering weight in the background. And she also held a mohair through the whole thing, which is different than the pattern calls for. And it looks really good, hers does. This one's not Molly's, this is Tamy's sample. But that's how it looks. And you can see it ends with a contrast color there, garter edge. Well, Molly said what she did was she just, anytime it called for a contrast color, she just started working with a mini skein, and as it ran out, she magic knotted the next skein on and started using it, kind of like we do with these granny crochet granny blankets, So I thought, well, I can do that with my rustic minis, and honestly, I love the way this one looks, but the main color is light. I would like a darker main color. So I took Knit Picks Hawthorne in Silverton colorway, which has a slightly purple, but it's a grayish brown to my eyes with a slight almost purple to it. And I mixed it with some mohair that I had in stash, but the mohair I didn't have. I got it from Sun Soaked Yarns on Etsy. So it's just chocolate fluff. It's a light brown mohair. So the light brown with this gray brown, I just love the way it looks. They look very nice, and it gives it some depth, you know. The whole thing is going to be so soft. So I am not to the color work part yet. This is where I am. It's just garter, but you can see, maybe you can see how it's working up. It's super soft. Hawthorne is not extremely soft sock yarn. It's like a little more like workhorse yarn, but with the added mohair, it feels a little luxurious. So then yesterday I took my rustic minis and I decided I'm going to do that. Go ahead and make a magic cake out of it. Now you probably know what a magic cake is, but it's where you use the magic knot to tie one little mini skein or leftover remnant of yarn to the next, and you wind it up and you make a magic cake. And sometimes people will trade these with each other and just start knitting, maybe on a blanket or something, and you just don't know what's inside the cake, you know. It's revealed slowly, so it's a lot of fun. I've never done that before. I have used magic knots before on my granny square blanket because I didn't want to have to weave in a million ends. So as I looked at all these mini skeins, I thought about all the ends, and you know, I'm reformed. I'm not going to have a lot of ends hanging off my project as I work on it. So I decided to make a magic cake. I'll still have to clip it in places and weave ends, but it won't be quite as many. It was also really fun to do. So I was really sick with crud. I think probably overheated from being outside. And just all this stuff was breaking up in my chest, and I just felt kind of yuck. And so I sat down and started using my new ball winder that a friend gave me. It was such a sweet gift. So I took these mini skeins and I put them over the Swift and start winding, and then tie it with a magic knot to the next one. And you guys probably know all of this, but so like Melissa is a new knitter. You probably don't know what a magic knot is. A magic knot is where you take the end of, I don't have two ends. You take the end of the old yarn, end of the new yarn, and you lay them next to each other. And you tie this end around this strand, and you tie this end around this strand in a little single knot. Then you take each and pull the strings apart, and the two knots slide along the strands until they hit each other and they stop right at the end. And so all you have to do is trim off a tiny little bit of yarn that's hanging out from the knot. And if it's yarn that will kind of felt, you can even spit splice and kind of get those little tiny bits of ends to kind of flatten out, and the knot kind of flattens, and it looks like just one continuous strand changing from one color to the next. And people do it a lot when they're knitting the granny blankets or things that they're using remnants for. So I did that, and as I just was winding my yarn and watching one color turn to the next, I just realized I just had this peaceful feeling listening to the winder. It squeaks, and it's just a neat, I don't know, it just had a neat old-fashioned peaceful feeling to it. I felt loved, and I was like, this was such a sweet little gift for someone to give me. It was just this simple moment in my day, but it just felt nice, you know, and I wasn't feeling so great, and I don't know. It was a neat little moment. So anyway, here is my magic cake. You can see a little bit of the colors that are inside. The rustic mini skein set is more earthy tones, and they're tonal. I don't know if you can really see that, but they go really well with this earth color. I'm very excited about doing this. But now all of these little colorwork sections there's a lot of brioche in them. I've only knit one brioche project before. It was Andrea Mowry's Marley shawl. I really enjoyed knitting it. But this has got mohair in it, and ripping back mohair stinks big time. So I just needed a refresher on mohair, on brioche. So Tammy has a link that's really good to a Nancy Marchant blog post about it. It's just the basics. And also Andrea Mowry, when she came out with her What the Fade Mystery Knit Along, she had tutorials, and her startup brioche startup round tutorial, and then she has more brioche knitting. She does it in English and continental. They're really helpful to kind of refresh yourself. But if you guys have any quick references for brioche, like personally, I enjoy learning, like with the Debbie Stoller books. I like to be able to flip open and have an image, just a drawing or two, or a static image of something that jogs my memory, and then I can keep going. I really hate having to stop, punch something into YouTube, wait for it to upload, wait for the ad to go, wait for someone to introduce what they're doing. It's not as handy. I remembered how to do it pretty quickly though. So I don't know that I need the quick reference, but lots of people out there might. I have a friend I've now made online on Instagram, and she's basically doing the same mini set and similar colors, the brown kind of color for her main color, but she's never done brioche before, so this will be a really neat learning experience for her. And those little quick references, I could pass that along to her if you guys know of any. So let me know. And I'm doing this as part of the BIPOC Make Along 2019. So that stands for Black, Indigenous, or People of Color Make Along for 2019. And it's just, if you're a designer, you're just looking for designers that are Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. So I was going to do this shawl anyway, but when another friend showed me they were part of that online, I thought, oh, well, I'll join in. Because Tammy is pretty well known, but a lot of people don't get a lot of traffic on their sites due to algorithms and just whatever. But the whole point, I think, of this Make Along is to get visibility for designers that weren't getting it before. Maybe they're not part of the Designers Who's Who. So I thought it would be fun. I would learn of some new patterns and new designers this way. Books. I finished The Goldfinch. It was really good. I enjoyed it. As I was reading it, I kept thinking, sorry, mohair fluff everywhere. I kept thinking, this makes me think of like reading a Dickens novel, even though I think I've only read one Dickens novel, and I was forced to in high school. I mean, it was good. Tale of Two Cities is good. It's just not as good when you're being forced. But just the idea of an orphan and just being mismanaged, mishandled all through life, it sounded very Dickensonian, is that the word? So after I finished the book, I read reviews at the end of my Kindle Reader version, and a lot of people compared it to Dickens. But then I read other reviews, and they were tearing it up. They said, this is not like Dickens, this is like juvenile fiction. She has dumbed down the art of writing, and, you know, basically, oh, what are we coming to if this is what we call serious literature? I didn't think it was dumbed down. But you know, what can I compare it to, really? Because I haven't read anything that was considered serious literature, I don't think, in a long time. I can't think of the last thing. I've read a lot of acclaimed books, not bestsellers necessarily, but a lot of considered classics, but not like, you know, in genres like sci-fi or something. A classic spy novel, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, but nobody's calling that one of the great classics of our time, right? So I started thinking, I really I really need to read some of those books that I always intended to do. I think I mentioned it in an early podcast episode. Still going to read those classics one day. I do want to. So I think I will start with some of the Greek classics and just see how far I get. Maybe read some history along with. But anyway, I did enjoy the book. I mean, it was a little difficult to read. As somebody kind of spirals down, a lot of heavy drug use or self-destruction isn't a pleasant read. I just kept hoping for something positive at the end, and I wasn't disappointed. I enjoyed reading it. I identified a little too with the character. Not that my life was anything so bad, but I lost my mother at a young age, and it was tragic. And I was mishandled a little afterward, you know. Someone came into our life that was just not very kind to me. And I could identify just a little in that, you know, in this book. He's, by the way, if you're going to read this, skip, fast forward to whatever the timestamp I put right now on the screen. I'm not going to give away a bunch of spoilers. It's just general stuff that you could probably get by reading the back of the book, but in case. You know, he's got this, almost like this attitude of, like he's destined for depression, for despair. And even after he's the man, he's the master of his own life, he's not in his parents' or anyone else's hands anymore. He keeps that cycle going with abusing himself, you know, with drugs or whatever. And I just thought about how my view of what life was about, my life was meant to be, was twisted and altered by that. I lost my mom, and if that had been it, that would be fine. But then you have someone new come into your family that is not kind to you when you're at an impressionable young age. And then, you know, different things happen, and you kind of grow up believing I'm a burden, I'm destined for, you know, never quite being good enough, depression, that kind of thing. And, you know, I was probably mid-20s before I really got how sick that is. That's not true at all. It's not how my life began, but it's that pivotal moment, that trauma or whatever that happens. And of course his is truly a trauma. It's not like someone dying of an illness. But anyway, I just felt a connection to the character in that respect. It was not nearly so horrible at all for me. And then I had, you know, all the good years before anyway. But there's something in there, probably each of us, some secret sadness or something in our life that could help us identify with him, and that we often feel like this is the rest of my life. I don't know anything but feeling like this, you know. Nothing good could be coming to me. So, I don't know. I thought that was touching. I also liked how this painting draws all these characters together, and how it, each was affected differently by it, and the descriptions they had of it. One character in particular, the way he describes the artist's work on the painting was, I just thought it was neat. I thought it was really good. His obvious love for it, just as each person gave their take on the painting, I enjoyed the difference or the similarities and how it had affected their life. And then a lot of people, I read people saying, oh, this book, it talks about the triumph of art, the eternal value of art. It does, but the art that we make is us talking about the eternal value in us, right? In our spirits, the love in us. That's what art is like, an outpouring of. So it really had a positive message in the end. Well, I was glad for that. So anyway, it has me wanting to read The Secret History again, which she wrote, and I read that, I don't know, my daughter was little. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but it was like 20 years between that book and this one, and she took 10 years to write it. So I don't know. There's a movie is coming out soon. I'm so glad I read it before seeing the movie, because it's not the same to see a movie version of something. It never is. It's like Brenda said about Ready Player One. She enjoyed the book. The movie, not so much. And after reading, Ready Player One was surprisingly, for some reason I forgot almost everything about the movie. I mean, I don't even remember how people looked or anything in it. So it didn't really mess the book up for me, but the book was very different from the movie. It was almost like two different stories in some respects. So anyway, I'm interested in reading some deeper, heavier books than I have been, but I just don't know that I can read them as I'm falling asleep because I'm too out of it. I may have bit off more than I can chew with the one I'm doing right now. It's another one that Brenda recommended. It's Between the World and Me by, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Ta-Nehisi Coates, but it is so current. For me, it would be really good to read. And I'm not even sure if I can even say what it's about. I mean, I literally was reading the prologue and I fell asleep last night. I just downloaded it last night. But it seems like it's kind of a insight into American history, that a lot of our history and who we are is built on the concept of race, and that's a faulty concept. I think it's going to have insights that maybe I didn't know. There's some basics that most level-headed people realize about our founding fathers, the beginnings of our nation, and the practice of slavery, all of it. Most people realize. When I was a kid, I don't think that stuff was highlighted, but it was somewhat. Much more so for my children, and then in the future even more. I remember hearing how you'll go to college and you'll become all liberal, people would say. They have a liberal interpretation of history. Maybe that's so, but the people saying it were people who just liked a very white American version of how things happened, and manifest destiny is still like alive and well in their mindset. So I don't have that mindset, but I came from that. You know, that's like an area of the country I came from, that surrounded by that. So I just know that this is going to give me a lot of thoughts I hadn't had before, or maybe something I might have felt intuitively, but might phrase it right, or help me, I don't know, see a different application. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to expect of it. It's really highly reviewed, but it's not fiction, so I'll probably start reading it at night and stay up reading it. It kind of takes something escape-like for me to switch off and fall asleep, but I just really wanted to read that one before I start moving into other things. I feel like it's very timely right now. And I was thinking how the conversation on racism began among knitters in January, but thoughts about it didn't begin there for me. However, thoughts that I can do more to make a difference absolutely started going in January for me. I mean, before it almost felt like a hopeless thing. Well, how can I, you know, and we live busy lives. Where will we find the time to make a difference in something so huge and ingrained in our society? And I felt really empowered by things that people have said online, I've heard or read, and I don't know, there's been a lot of soul searching, and I don't know, I just think it's going to be good. It's going to be a good read, and if that is something that interests you, you might want to check that out. I have links to all of this. So all right, so here's my question for you guys. When you're about to run short on yarn, which I did here, and you see I had to use another color that's not quite the same just for the cast off row. It's so ridiculous. I started running short here, and that's why my end is ridiculously small. That's not even much to weave in. Even on my color craze shawl, if you remember, I showed you the picture, the very last few rows are in a contrast color for the garter border. I think Molly of a Homespun House, she used the same set of kind of mini skeins that I'm using. She used her main color for the border. I don't know that there's enough excuse me, contrast color yarns to do that. So I'm going to modify and probably use main color as my border. So what do you do when you start to run short of yarn? Give me some of the tricks you've used in the past for different things. And I'd like to know specifically, do you spit splice so that you don't have ends? Do you spit splice so that you don't have to waste yarn? Because end weaving takes up quite a bit of yarn, at least 4 inches maybe. Do you magic knot so that you don't have ends or waste yarn? Because a knot takes a whole lot less yarn than weaving in 2 ends. I would like to hear how you guys handle that. And if you've made a magic ball of yarn or a magic cake, what have you used it on? It's a lot of fun. I want to do it again. I want to do it for my granny stripe blanket that I'm going to make out of sock yarns. So, oh, and one more thing. Quick visual references for brioche, if you can think of any. The 2 I mentioned were not quick. One is a long article, and the other is a couple of YouTube videos that have commercials before each one. If you know of any quick picture references, I mean, the Nancy Marchant one does have pictures, but anyway, if you have any good tips on that, quick references, let me know, and I'll pass it along to my friend who's doing a similar shawl as me. I hope you guys have a good week. I know I'm sick and I sound cruddy and my eyes are watering. They're leaking all over the place. I'm like, I'm gonna edit this and have like Alice Cooper makeup. But I just wanted to do it because if I didn't today, it would be a week before I got to do it. So, talk to me.